can tell me whether it was or not. This subject of doing the clutch adjustment is extremely important. It has to be done at every single service on a Harley Davidson. The clutch itself, the clutch pack, needs to be adjusted so it has the correct free play. The free play in question is nothing to do with the lever. The free play we're talking about is expansion space, heat expansion space. The clutch itself, as it gets used, the 7 or 8 plates that are in it will expand, and they'll need room to expand, otherwise they'll start rubbing together or dragging, and that's no good. So you have to have the requisite space. Other bikes don't have this, they're all automatically adjusted, but on a Harley Davidson there's still a manual adjustment at this point, so you still have to do it as part of your service. So I'm going to show you how to do it. It's extremely simple, but before we do that I just want to talk briefly about the oil level. Lots of you in the last video asked about the primary case oil level. I want to show you precisely what the oil level is. There isn't a sight glass and there isn't a dipstick, so you can't do it accurately like you would. And a lot of you brand new mechanics, you need finite things, you need specifics in order to be confident, and I just want to give you that, which I didn't give you in the last video, so apologies for that. I want to make it as clear as I can and then tell you again, just one more time, why we put in, once we know the level is correct, we put in the same amount that we drained out, because if the level's correct, you know that when you're finished, the level will be correct. Let's show you where the exact level is. Come on in, Pen. Okay, I just want to address this because I don't think I made it clear enough in the last video. The primary case oil level. Now, lots of you ask questions. If you drain out more than is in the manual, then was it maybe overfilled? Perfectly logical question. But there are so many times that the prescribed quantity in a manual confuses people. I've never used it. I must say, in 30 years I've been doing this, I've never used a quantity level or a quantified amount for a manual once. I don't do that. I just use this method. Like I did yesterday or the other day in the video, you check the oil level. See this spring? This is the clutch actuation spring here. You can only see the top 2/3 of it. The bottom third of it is under the casing, you can't see it. But the oil level is to the bottom of it. So this clutch actuation spring that sits on the clutch pack, come in close, Pen. If you look here, this here is the clutch plate. That's one of the notches on the clutch plate, that's the clutch basket here. So if the oil level at the bottom is up to here, then there it is, it's up to the bottom of the clutch. Simple as that. So that in any Harley Davidson, that's the oil level in any primary, Sportsters as well. The oil level in a primary is to the bottom of the clutch, not onto the clutch, not halfway up it, to the bottom. So this black spring around the outside, this is the clutch actuation spring. That there, if you take a visual cast downwards to where that would be, it will be about there. But there's no dipstick and there's no window, so you have to judge it. Simple as that. And all I did in the last video, I used a piece of wire, tucked down in there, and then you can visually get perspective on where it is. If you're just looking down into it, even with a torch, you can't really see the oil level. But if you put a bit of wire down there, just touch that, oh yeah, there it is, I can see it, then you know the oil level is correct. However much is in there is irrelevant. If the level is correct, then it's correct. Drain that much out, put it in a jug, measure it, clean jug, put the same amount of fresh oil in another jug and pour it in. So you've put the same amount in that you took out, and the level is to the bottom of the clutch. You know, simple as that. Don't worry about the quantities, I've never used that. It's just to the bottom of the clutch and you're done. Let's adjust it. To start the process, you have to adjust the cable itself. The cable will interfere with the clutch adjustment unless you back all the slack off it first, so it's out of the equation. So to do that, in the middle of it here, on all Harleys you'll find this concertina style gaiter. Take that up out of the way. 9/16 1/2 inch, and just break the jam nut, lock nut, whatever. I think the previous techs have put copper slip on this, which is nice. Always keep that lubricated because the weather and stuff hitting it from here will always make that corrode up. So just back that off, take the jam nut right back out of the way and adjust that all the way up until it contacts. Take all the possible available slack you have, like that, jam that right together. And then up here is masses of play and isn't interfering with the clutch. Alright, so this is the middle part of the job. This is right what it centers on. It's adjusting this fitting here. In the center you get a little bolt with an Allen socket cut into the end of it, and you get a lock nut. Simple as that. So we're going to release the lock nut and then adjust that. That's how easy it is. Lock nut is 11/16, so we pop an 11/16 on there. And the centre nut, you have to hold it still because all you'll do is rotate the clutch, otherwise that will just turn the motor over. So we put this in, this is a 7/32, it's an imperial size, pop that in there. And that then holds everything still. So use the Allen key or Allen wrench to hold the whole thing still and then just back off or break the jam nut. There it is. Now, there should be no resistance or force on this. It should undo like that by finger. Simple. Should be nice and loose. This is an internal engine component. It lives in a bath of oil the whole time. That should never seize up. So once that's nice and free, back it out so it's properly out of the way, because we'll screw it in again. So once that's out of the way, put your Allen key back in. And an important point is put it in small end first. You might have fancy socket mounted Allen keys like this, but this isn't the time for one. This is a specific time you use one of these. I'll show you why. With this adjustment, you wind it in. I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's put that there. There we go. Wind it in until it stops under the weight of the Allen key, like that. Now, there is no point at which this locks up. In the last one we did on the Sportster clutch adjustment many moons ago, people asked all the time, how do I know how much resistance I'm looking for? Well, the problem is there is no stop point, because when you wind that in, if I keep winding that in, there's a little bit of resistance, but you can tell with one finger there ain't much. I could keep winding that in all day, and all I'm doing is I'm opening the clutch plates on the spring. So there's no seat, there's no solid fixed point on this clutch. Once you get to a point where that happens, that's when the free play in the bolt is finished and it meets the clutch pack and it stops. Now if you start to push down, then you're starting to open the clutch, and that's no good. You need it to be where it stops, which is about there under the weight of the Allen key. All right? Once you get to that point, then back off half turn to there. Ain't odd, is it, Ben?
Easy.
That's it. That's now set correct. Harley Davidson's information says half a turn to 1 full turn. Now when they say that, what they're referring to is, because this is an expansion space, what you're giving the clutch when you do this adjustment is space to expand with heat. So if what you do with your Harley causes the engine to get extremely hot, for instance, stunts. Now there's a massive groundswell now of guys doing stunts on diners and that sort of thing, and if you had that, you would adjust the full turn because the engine's getting so hot. Perhaps you live in Nevada, perhaps you live in the Sahara Desert or whatever. If where you live is extremely hot, you may need 3/4 turn, maybe a full turn. But like all things with Harley Davidson, like with their torque settings, they don't give a specific, they always give a range, and their view is that anywhere within that range is fine. So the range with this is half to 1 full turn, and I would suggest for where we live in ambient England, that from there where it just touches half a turn is correct. So we're going to set it there today. So once you hold it half a turn away from its stop point, that's it set. We do up the jam nut with your finger, nice and tight. Put your spanner on. And again, put that back in and hold it where it was, otherwise it will adjust, it will move. Holding that still, just nip it up to 10 Newton meters. Now, just about there. That's it. Now, 10 Newton meters. I didn't do that with a torque wrench. If you're to do this up with a torque wrench, you need a fancy tool. Those of you who've got one will know what it is, and yes, they are a fancy tool. It's a special thing with a torque wrench attached because you've got this in the center holding it still, so you can't get a regular socket on there. So you need a specialized torque wrench, but you don't need a specialized torque wrench. I've never used one in 30 years. All I do is nip it up because it's the torque setting on it is 72 to 120 inch-pounds. That's the range that Harley recommend for that nut, 72 to 120 inch-pounds. So I'd say about 90, and 90 inch-pounds is 10 Newton meters. Now when I look at my torque wrench, can you come in on this, Pen? Mm-hmm. Just to show you how little that is. My torque wrench starts at 10 Newton meters. So what that means quite simply is it's not much. So you don't really need a torque wrench for 10 Newton meters. This is another one of those situations where you new mechanics, you need specifics, you need finites, so that you can do it and you get that peace of mind, it won't click, you feel good. But honestly, you need specialist tools. If you're not prepared to buy them, you need to learn that nous, that mechanics sense of that feels right. A bit like palming the bung plug in underneath. So that's one of those. 10 Newton meters, nip it up. Never had one come undone, ever. So all we need to do now, put the new gasket and the casing on. Right, very helpful on these gaskets you get towards the clutch side. So that's that side in. So we're going to mount it on the casing first. And rather cleverly, Harley have put this triangulated hole in the top of the gasket so that when you put that on, you can use one of the screws popped in and you can turn the screw or pop it through gently, and what that does is hangs the gasket on it. That triangulated hole just stops the gasket from falling off. So we can mount that one first, and then we know every other hole is going to line up. For what it's worth, that is a torque wrench. It's 10 Newton meters, that's what I do this up to. 70, again I looked it up, 72 to 108 inch-pounds on these bolts, which again you'd set it at about 90 because again, Harley don't give you a specific torque setting, they give you a torque range. So setting that at 90 inch-pounds would be 10 Newton meters. That is a torque wrench that goes from 5 to 14 Newton meters. So I've got that set at 10 Newton meters, which gave me a nice satisfying click. If you use a bigger torque wrench, which this one starts at 10 Newton meters, I don't think you get the same accuracy as if you're using a wrench that is in the middle of its range. So again, if you're going to buy different torque wrenches, if you're going to have just one, make sure that it encompasses everything. And it's the smaller settings like 10 Newton meters that are more critical than the big fat ones that are 100, because those you just do them up FT. And everybody knows what that is. But it's the smaller ones that are critical, so there we are, especially in this casing, because if you use the original factory bolts, unlike these stainless ones, then you can mince them real easy, especially in the heads. Right, last thing, adjust the cable back to its normal setting. Right, this is simplicity itself. You've got this bottle screw, and up here, all this unnecessary free play. So we just turn the bottle screw out, extend it, and you can see it takes the free play out. All the way till it stops. And you've got all the free play out like that, and then we adjust it back in again. So come in until you get the free play appear. Now this gap here where my thumbnail is, that's the gap that tells us what free play we've got, and in this gap you're looking for 3mm or 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch. So I'll just look at it myself. A bit more in it, Pen?
Yeah.
Tell me when it's 3mm. About there?
About there, yeah.
About there. That's a little bit too much. Right, there we are. If you can close in on that, Pen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's how you set your free play, by pulling the cable shroud off the clevis and then just wiggle it backs and forwards, and that gap there is the requisite 3mm or so, which is a 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch. That's the gap you want. If ever you find that your clutch itself, if that disappears and you don't have any, that's a couple of seconds to adjust that, but just make sure it's correct, because as the engine heats up and so on and everything expands, that free play is important to make sure that when you let the lever out, the clutch plates are all completely engaged with each other, nice and solid. If that is in some way pulled because there's no free play, then your clutch plates have been slightly released from each other, meaning that they'll start to slip. And a slipping clutch isn't only annoying, it's damaging, and it can wear out the life of the clutch far sooner. So once that's adjusted to where you think it should be, there, bring the jam nut back down. See what I do. I always put, because of the weather that gets to this area, just a little blob of copper slip, anti-seize compound, even regular grease, whatever you want. Just something to stop the weather jamming this up. There's nothing worse. I've seen so many of these just rusted solid like a lump, and it's a new clutch cable. Not only is that annoying and expensive, it's a really lengthy job because you've got to get it out of the gearbox. It's not just a case of a cable. So hold that still and just nip it up. There we go, don't need to be too tight. No torque setting for that one, and push the gator back down. Now every now and again, it doesn't hurt, especially if you're riding your Harley all winter, is to take your WD-40 tube, stick it in the top of that hole, and just give it a squirt and move that up and down and make sure it's all greasy in there, because that's fantastic. It will keep that adjuster healthy. And finally, I've just got to take this little plastic clip there and screw it to the frame. Alright, there we go, munching through the jobs now. This is number 3 out of about 5, 6 jobs, I reckon. The next thing we've got to do is the chain adjustment itself. Primary chain adjustment is as important a video as the clutch adjustment, so tune in for that one. That'll be number 4, I believe, Ben?
It is.
It will, and then number 5 will be the big oil change over the other side in the tank, and we're going to purge that at the same time. That's a very important thing. Haven't seen that on the net yet, so I'll give you that one. And the last one will be the fork oil, which again, haven't seen that very easily because we've got a very simple way of doing it indeed. Just a very cheap piece of equipment that will mean you don't have to strip the front end at all. You just take the caps off and suck it out. So I'll show you all that at the time. Now if you're going to do this service yourself, it will take you probably a day, maybe a day and a half, to set aside a bit of time, but most importantly you're going to be saving a lot of money. All these half a dozen big jobs you're going to do, they add up in labour. Take this to the dealership, they're going to charge you 4 hours labour, that's £400 or £500, plus the sundries and all the bits, all the oils and stuff. Once that adds up, it's not hard to be paying £500 for a service. Some of you emailed to us and said, oh, I only pay $350, but that, honestly, believe me, that will be a basic service. That's just your 3 holes, simple as that. On the other hand, if you're looking at fork oil as well, brake fluid as well, all the other little jobs you'll do, little things that a technician does, like taking this lever off and greasing all that up, that adds time. That's another 15 minutes added. That's another 25 quid on your bill, cha-ching. So think about that. You're going to save an awful lot of money in doing this big old service yourself. And at the end you do the critical fastness check, which is where you need things like that torque wrench. That's what I'm getting at here. Invest some money that you're saving in some tools for your garage. It's not all money for your sweeties and to go down the pub. That money should be invested in your garage. Then you're getting yourself able to do it all the more. You're growing as a motorcyclist, a mechanic, whatever you want to call yourself. You're growing and you're improving. That's what we suggest you do. That's what we like to advocate. That torque wrench is some £200, but when I come to do my critical fastness check, I can use that to do torque checks on the critical fastness that I cannot do with that thing because it's just too big and clumsy to get in the space. Some of these little torque settings, they're just so in the way you can't do it, you can't get to them. So you need certain tools. So that's what we're suggesting, ain't it, Pam?
Yes.
Make sure that you, if you can, you spend some of the money that we're saving you in doing this yourself and teaching you, that you spend it on tools and equipment for your garage, because that will make you a better mechanic all the way along. Anything else, Ben?
How hard can it be?
How hard can it be indeed? There we are. Join us for number 4, primary chain adjustment. Until then, ride safe, take it easy. See you next time.